Comfort zone is a silent killer. Average feels safe. That's the trap. When you settle into good enough, your brain stops sounding alarms. There's no crisis, no pain, no reason to change. But silence isn't safety, it's decay. Muscles that aren't challenged atrophy. Minds that aren't pushed go dull. The scary part is you don't feel it happening in real time. You feel it years later when you look back and realize you're in the exact same place you were 5 years ago, just older. Comfort doesn't announce itself as danger. It disguises itself as peace. People don't fall apart in crisis. Crisis actually sharpens them. People fall apart in comfort because comfort removes the resistance that was building their character. Think about it. Nobody ever built discipline sitting on a couch. Nobody ever built resilience by avoiding hard days. The version of you that's addicted to convenience is the version that will crumble the moment real adversity shows up because it never trained for it. Average is dangerous precisely because it doesn't hurt. And pain is usually the signal that tells us to change. Remove the pain, and you remove the motivation to grow. That's why so many people stay stuck for decades, not because they're incapable, but because average never gave them a reason to fight for something more. Average is just socially accepted mediocrity. Society doesn't punish average. It applauds it. Show up on time, do the minimum, don't cause trouble, and you'll get a paycheck, a pat on the back, maybe even praise for being reliable. That's the trap. Average gets rewarded just enough to feel acceptable. Nobody's going to pull you aside and say you're wasting your potential because average doesn't threaten anyone. It blends in. It's invisible. And that's exactly why it's dangerous. There's no external pressure forcing you to level up, so the only pressure that can save you has to come from inside. Most people never build that internal pressure, so they float through life on autopilot, mistaking survival for success. They tell themselves, I'm doing fine. Fine compared to what? Compared to people who also settled? That's a rigged comparison. Real growth isn't measured against the crowd, it's measured against your own ceiling. The version of you that's still asleep. Average convinces you that you've arrived, when really you've just stopped moving. And the world will let you believe that lie for as long as you want, because your mediocrity doesn't cost society anything. It only costs you. Your time, your potential, your one shot at finding out what you are actually capable of. That silence from the world is not approval. It's abandonment disguised as acceptance. The brain is wired to protect you from greatness. Your mind's number one job isn't to make you successful. It's to keep you alive. That means it's constantly steering you toward the path of least resistance. Because from a survival standpoint, conserving energy is safer than chasing some uncertain, difficult goal. This is why every time you consider doing something hard, waking up earlier, pushing through pain, chasing a bigger goal, your brain manufactures excuses, you're tired, it's not the right time, you've done enough for today. That voice isn't lying to punish you. It's lying to protect you from risk. But here's the shocking truth. The risk it's protecting you from is the exact risk required for transformation. Average is the byproduct of listening to that protective voice every single time. The people who break out of average aren't people who silence that voice completely. They're people who learn to act despite it. They treat the resistance they feel as a signal that they're on the right track, not the wrong one. Discomfort becomes the compass, not the deterrent. If your brain constantly tells you to stay average because it's safer, then staying average will always feel like the smart choice, even though it's the choice that guarantees you'll never know your true ceiling. The most dangerous lie your mind tells you is that comfort equals progress, when comfort is usually the very thing blocking it. Average doesn't kill you instantly. It kills you slowly. Nobody wakes up one day and decides to become average. It happens in inches. You skip one workout, then two, then it becomes a pattern. You settle for good enough on one project, then it becomes your standard. This is what makes average more dangerous than failure. Failure is loud, painful, and forces a reaction. Average is quiet. It doesn't force anything. It lets you drift for years without a wake-up call, and by the time you notice, you've lost a decade to autopilot. This is the slow death of potential. Not a dramatic collapse, but 1,000 tiny surrenders that compound into a life you didn't choose on purpose. The scariest part is that slow decline feels stable. There's no dramatic low point to snap you out of it, just a long, flat line of mediocrity that starts to feel normal. You stop comparing yourself to what you're capable of and start comparing yourself to people who are equally stuck, which makes your stagnation feel acceptable. This is why urgency has to be self-generated. If you wait for life to force you into change, average will bury you in comfort long before that moment arrives. Because average never gives you a clear signal that something is wrong. It just quietly takes your years, one unchallenged day at a time. Discomfort is the entry fee for everything worth having. Every version of you that you admire, stronger, sharper, more disciplined, exists on the other side of discomfort you haven't faced yet. Average people avoid discomfort because they see it as the enemy. But discomfort isn't your enemy. It's the toll booth on the road to becoming someone new. The reason so many people stay average is because they keep trying to find a painless path to an extraordinary life, and that path doesn't exist. Every skill, every physical transformation, every mental breakthrough was purchased with hours of doing something that felt hard, boring, or uncomfortable. Long after the excitement wore off, this is the part nobody wants to hear. Motivation fades within days, but discomfort is a daily requirement. If you're only willing to push when you feel inspired, you'll only grow in short bursts, then slide right back to your baseline, which is average. The people who escape average have made peace with being uncomfortable as a permanent condition, not a temporary phase before things get easy. They've stopped waiting for discomfort to end before they start living the life they want. That shift, treating discomfort as fuel instead of a warning sign, is the single biggest difference between someone stuck in average and someone building an extraordinary life. Pain isn't a stop sign. It's a green light you were taught to fear. Your standards quietly become your ceiling. You don't rise to your goals. You fall to your standards. This is why two people can have the exact same dream and completely different outcomes. Their daily standards are different. Average isn't a lack of ambition. Most average people have huge dreams. What they lack are standards high enough to force those dreams into reality. A goal is something you want. A standard is something you refuse to go below, no matter how you feel that day. When your standard for effort, discipline, and honesty with yourself is low, your ceiling shrinks to match it, and no amount of wishing changes that. The dangerous part is that low standards feel like self-compassion. It's okay, I'll start tomorrow, feels kind in the moment, but it's actually a vote for staying exactly where you are. Every time you accept less from yourself, you're not just losing that one moment. You're teaching your mind that this is the new normal. Standards compound just like habits do. Raise them slightly, consistently, and your whole trajectory shifts. Keep them low, and no dream, no matter how big, will ever be big enough to override the ceiling your daily standards have built. If you want to know your future, don't look at your goals. Look at your standards. That's where the real prediction lives. What if the most dangerous place you could ever end up isn't rock bottom? It's average? What if the comfortable, doing fine, good enough life you're living right now is quietly stealing everything you were built to become, and you don't even feel it happening? Nobody warns you about average. They warn you about failure. They warn you about hitting rock bottom, but nobody sits you down and says, the real threat to your life is going to be comfortable, mediocrity, dressed up as stability. Average doesn't come for you with pain. It comes for you with a paycheck, a routine, a couch, and a phone. It comes for you disguised as rest when really it's rot. You were not built to coast. Somewhere inside you, there is a version that trains when it's raining, that gets up before the world tells it to, that finishes what it starts, even when every cell in its body is begging to quit. That version is still in there. It's just been buried under years of taking the easy option, one small surrender at a time. Here's the truth nobody wants to say out loud. Your mind is not trying to make you great. Your mind is trying to keep you safe. And safe means small. Safe means quiet. Safe means average. Every time you feel that resistance before a hard workout, a hard conversation, a hard decision, that's not weakness talking. That's your old, comfortable identity trying to survive one more day. And if you listen to it today, you'll listen to it tomorrow, and next year, you'll wonder where the time went. Average doesn't kill you in one moment. It kills you in inches. One skipped workout, one lowered standard, one "I'll start Monday." It never sounds an alarm because there's no crisis. That's exactly why it's more dangerous than failure. Failure forces you to react. Average lets you sleep through your entire life and call it peace. So ask yourself right now, not tomorrow, not after this video ends, what standard have you been quietly accepting that you know is beneath what you're capable of? What have you been calling fine that, deep down is a lie you tell yourself so you don't have to do the hard thing? Discomfort is not your enemy. Comfort is. Every callus on your character, every ounce of self-respect you've ever earned came from a moment you wanted to quit and didn't. Growth was never going to feel good in the moment. It was only ever going to feel worth it in the end. Stop waiting to feel ready. Stop waiting for motivation. Motivation is a coward. It shows up after the work is already done. Discipline is what shows up when nobody's clapping, when nobody's watching, when the only person keeping score is you. You don't need a new opportunity. You don't need a new year, a new Monday, a new sign from the universe. You need a new standard. Today, right now, in this exact moment. Because your future isn't built by your goals. It's built by what you refuse to accept from yourself on an average Tuesday when nobody's watching and nothing is on the line. Average will always feel safer than extraordinary. It will always be quieter, easier, and more socially acceptable. But safe is not the same as significant, and comfortable is not the same as fulfilled. The most dangerous place you can live your entire life is the middle. Not because it hurts, but because it doesn't. Pain would have forced you to change. Silence just lets you disappear slowly, one comfortable day at a time. You get to decide, starting today, whether you spend the rest of your life defending your